Hey everyone, welcome back to Askamy. I have a question today from Judy. Judy says, I've been in this conversation now for a few years, listening to you and others online. I've generally found this understanding to be helpful, but I can't say I fully get it or that I've had many insights. I seem to have one big stumbling block when it comes to seeing this clearly. You and others say that everyone is basically healthy and whole, they just don't know it. If that's true, it must be true for everyone. I have a family member who was diagnosed at a young age with Tourette's syndrome and multiple associated conditions and has struggles both physically and mentally. This continues to be very difficult for him and his entire family. He'll never be able to live independently, and the healthcare and social service systems seem to be of little help. My question is, how can this situation be seen through the lens of this understanding? So thank you, Judy, for sending your question. It's a great question, a very common question, or common sort of theme, class of questions, I guess. And I guess the thing I would kind of point you toward is that, now hold my words very, very loosely and just see if you can get a bigger kind of sense of where I'm pointing, a feel for what I'm saying. In a sense, living in a way where our mind, thought filters everything. We live in a world of duality, of relativity. So your family member is relatively unhealthy compared to other people, and he's relatively healthy compared to yet other people, right? So everything is relative. Now, for everything to be relative, everything has to be separate. And that's what thought and the mind kind of creates, is we seem to live in this world that is a real physical world where there are stable circumstances or ways of being, where all people are separate, where all circumstances are separate. And again, everything is compared to everything else. Not that you're doing that, but it's what happens because the mind filters just like this perceptual overlay that spits out everything as separate and relative and not this but that. So in that kind of relative world that we appear to live in, that relativity, like it can't see the circumstance you're sharing as health and wholeness. I mean, maybe it sort of could. Again, you could say, well, he's not as bad off as someone else, right? But that's not helpful. And it feels fake and it feels forced. I mean, the truth of it is, through this relative perception, through the perception that you're seeing him and his struggles and his family struggles and all of that, all of which are very valid, and they feel very like solid and real, and that is their experience, and it is your experience as you see it. Through that lens, through this perceptual overlay of relativity and duality, you're not going to see that as healthy and whole. I don't know anyone who really would. It just doesn't look that way, right? Because it's in the relative. But where this bigger understanding is pointing is to the fact that, or to the idea, you just try this out and see, to the possibility that there is a perceptual overlay happening that makes everything look and feel separate, and that makes everything, appear as if it's full of duality and relativity. So we're looking at the fact that thought creates a reality like this, a reality that looks and feels this way. Like he has a problem and it's bad and it shouldn't have been that way. It shouldn't be how it is. That's basically kind of what you're saying. It's when we suffer, it feels like I'm a me, I have a life, and my life should be some other way. I mean, that's it. That's essentially what you're saying. And again, in this relative world, very, very understandable, right? We might look at that and say, yeah, if that was me or my family member, my mind would be saying, this is a person, this is their life is wrong. Their life should not have this disease. It should not have all of these side effects. It should not have this suffering. It should not be this way. And of course, anytime we're living in and truly believing that this is me and my life and it should not be this way, we cannot not suffer in that to some degree, right? I mean, sometimes it's really minor. Sometimes you're just running late for a meeting and you're like, kind of impatient and frustrated. Well, inherent in that is it shouldn't be this way. I should be on time. But to the extent that that's in there, there's going to be some suffering because, of course, right? That's kind of what suffering is. It's us arguing with reality. So where this gets practical and real and helpful is not in trying to see that your family member with Tourette syndrome and all of that, not in trying to see his health. Now we could see his health, and again, and not just in a happy mindset kind of way. I mean, there's a ton of health going on there. So in the relative world even, you could see some health and some wholeness, but I don't even want to mess with that right now because it's just not really the point. And I think that is where people get kind of frustrated, and maybe where you've gotten frustrated and felt like you're kind of hitting a wall. The real point, the much bigger thing to look toward in this, Judy, is that the relative world is just what appears to be. It just looks the way it looks. But I want you to see that there's something beyond that relative world, or just be open to that. That there truly, like, nothing is inherently wrong with your family member, with the people around him who are suffering, with anything, with anyone. Where is the inherent wrongness? Where would that live? Like, where would it be? Nothing is inherently anything. Also, nothing is inherently right. Nothing is inherently joyful. Nothing is inherently full of suffering. There is no inherent. There is no thing. There is no thing. So it's like watching how the mind, again, separates and labels and gives meaning and gives judgment and all of that. And that's totally fine. That's just a mind doing what it's doing. It doesn't need to stop, and it probably won't. It doesn't matter. It's fine. But what we're looking at in this bigger understanding is that's just what a mind does. Okay, great. Live in that, acknowledge it, feel it when it shows up. That's part of our experience, right? A huge part of our experience. But also know that there's more, or be curious and look in the direction of what else there is besides this always full of suffering, to some degree, relative reality. So when it looks like there's, suffering is inherent and he's sick and it should be different, that has to be the mind chopping things up and putting labels and judgments on things. There's no other way, because in the bigger, more absolute sense, and again, hold this very loosely because just using words, I'm already making it relative. In the bigger, more absolute sense of things, nothing is inherently anything. There is no suffering inherent in someone whose body works differently than someone else's. The suffering comes in when we're like, it shouldn't be this way, and he needs support and he doesn't have it, and all of that. And again, it's never to dismiss that, but that's where you see people who are absolutely thriving in circumstances that we think look horrible, and vice versa, which we see more often. People who are absolutely miserable in circumstances that we say, hey, what are you miserable about? You have everything anyone could want. It's because it's not about that stuff. It's not about your health. It's not about the state of the world. It's not about whether you can live independently or not. None of that. This goes deeper than that. So I hope you can get a feel for how we're going to experience the relative. That's what we're conditioned into. That's what looks real to us. But we don't want to stop there. We want to keep seeing, because when we stop there, and that's what we've just been taught to do, we just, like, the door closes. It's like, nope, bad, shouldn't happen. You're going to suffer. But when you can experience that, but also know, hey, I know this is my mind, because I don't always suffer equally, and some people more and some less, and some moments more and less, and you start to see all the holes in this. That can start to open you up to, like, what's really going on here? And can a circumstance, like a health circumstance or something like that, can it make anything? Does it mean anything? Is it a sign of a lack of health? No, it isn't. But again, we're not going to see it from that perspective. So I hope you can kind of feel where I'm pointing in this. It's like I said, it's a very common question, a very classic question. Like, are you telling me that when there's bombs going off and someone's, suffering or laying in a hospital bed dying or can't support themselves, that I'm supposed to see the health and be okay in that? No, I'm saying you won't be able to. Your mind won't be able to. But that's duh. That's how a mind works. A mind is all about separation and good, bad, should, shouldn't. We're saying we want to look beyond that. And we do that just by simple curiosity and openness, and really looking at how the mind constructs this stuff that seems so solid and real, but absolutely does not hold up to scrutiny. When you start really looking, nothing your mind says is the truth. It's going to change its story at every turn, and it's just not the place to look. So I hope this helps, Judy. Keep listening and let me know, and I can point you in the direction of some other resources that kind of point you toward the much bigger picture of this, more toward that absolute, which I think makes a massive difference. So thanks for listening, and I'll see you guys next week.